Well, we have a special edition of McBlog today because my colleague Simon O'Connor, well, I guess I was a little bit jealous, but at the same time, I was a little bit nervous for him. Recently had a trip to Israel. Simon, welcome to McBlog. Were you looking forward to this trip, or was there a kind of a nervousness about it?
Uh, I was looking forward to it, but even there's a nuance. I mean, you're going into a war zone,
Mm.
going into a place where there's death and devastation, and we're going to share a little bit of that. I was primarily on the Israeli side, but got up, Bob, to the Gaza border, and
Yeah.
was able to see the destruction and likely death happening there. So I think for me, it was important to go and see. I was not myself worried. My family was. A lot of friends were very
Yeah.
concerned. And we can talk about safety because there's a bit of a paradox in all of that. But look, I've been to war zones before. I've been to Iraq. I've been to Afghanistan. So for me to go to Israel, to the massacre sites, to observe from across the border what's happening in Gaza to a degree, because I didn't get inside Gaza for reasons I think people should probably understand. So no, it was good to go. Including I was there during Eastertide, so it wasn't all, if you will, hard work, death and destruction. I, also got into Jerusalem, for example, and the Dead Sea. So there was still some profound moments too.
Okay, and we're going to see some of that. Just so people understand, I mean, was this just an interestingly timed tourist trip? Were you going to a conference? How did you get there?
So I was invited by the Israeli government, particularly actually their Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So many of your listeners will know that obviously I was in Parliament. I used to chair New Zealand's Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee. But importantly, this delegation. So I was with actually people from Sri Lanka, Nepal, Cambodia, Thailand, India. There was
Mhm.
a small delegation of us. And what we all had in common is that we all have quite a large social media reach.
Yeah.
So my take on it is that the Israelis were going, okay, we're probably not, and by the way, this is me speaking, this is not what they told me, but long and short, you don't get a lot of broad coverage in mainstream media,
No.
probably in many ways quite one-sided. And so they're asking, independent people like myself and these others to come to look and observe. And that's important for people to know. I mean, just two really quick things, Bob. Obviously, they were taking us to particular places, but at no point was my access to people and conversations restricted. So, that's important to acknowledge, but that was the reason. So supposedly, Bob, I'm an influencer. So that's why I went. And look, thanks to you for giving me the time off.
Very important. No, it's all part of the package. Well, perhaps we could, I guess, look, obviously there's some serious stuff that you were looking at and, disturbing stuff, but why don't we start with the positive and give us a bit of the type of photos you'd show at the dinner party when you just want to have a nice evening.
Yeah. Well, look, first and foremost, we'll share quite a few photos with people today. And by the way, some can be disturbing to people, but I better say up front, there's nothing terribly awful. I'm not showing you some of the worst
No.
excesses. It's mainly the damage.
Yeah.
So that's just an early heads up to people. But these first ones are much more light and easy.
Mm.
Israel is ultimately a place of enormous history, particularly in the biblical sense. So these are actually the Qumran caves just down by the Dead Sea. So if people know about the Dead Sea Scrolls, discovered by Bedouin in the 1940s, some of the earliest translation of the scriptures. So yeah, the Dead Sea Scrolls in these caves of Qumran. So that was quite profound. You're about 400 meters below sea level as you head to the Dead Sea. So those are the Qumran caves. I better be clear, I don't know which specific one held the papyrus text, but again, for me, quite profound to be in a place like that. And then I think next up, if I remember the order of, this is El Gedi. And if you know your scriptures like my stepson does inside out, in the book of 2 Samuel, there's the story of David and Saul. David's been pursued by Saul, and he hides in caves in El Gedi. And that's where David goes into Saul's tent, takes his sword and cuts his robe, realizing that actually God had put Saul into David's hands and David spared him. But El Gedi is actually specifically mentioned, and it's an oasis,
Yep.
literally in this desert. And then there's the Dead Sea. I will not show you photos of me floating in the water. But that's the Dead Sea. So just off to the right is Jordan, the Kingdom of Jordan, and obviously the Israeli side. But lots of tourists, well, just floating in the water and rubbing themselves in mud. So that was, again, it was, I'm still trying to find the right words, Bob, because I was there for serious business. The country's at war. People are dying. And yet at the same time, I suppose life goes on. So it was nice to see those. And speaking personally, it was a bit of a release or relief. Literally days of looking at massacre sites and talking to survivors is pretty heavy. Probably one of the highlights for me religiously, this is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, in the Old City. This is where tradition believes Jesus was crucified and was buried, and importantly, of course, rose again. So I was there during Eastertide, which itself was quite profound. So that's the outside. Yeah, it was wonderful timing, really. So that's the outside of the church. This one here, if you love history like me, there's that ladder, because this church is run by the Catholics, the Armenians, and the Orthodox. And long and short, being religious traditions, we're usually having infights. And literally, I think about 100, 150 years ago, someone moved that ladder and all hell broke loose. And so since then, no one's touched it. They're not allowed to touch it. So there you go. The issues of religion summed up by
my
one
handiwork job done at home. Yeah, left the stuff out. Okay.
There's been unfortunately big fights, and that's inside. This is the where tradition. This is since the time of Emperor Constantine. So we're talking the 4th century, where they believe Jesus was crucified. So right in the middle. I know it's very shiny. I tried my best. I think this might be the Catholic. There's different sections of the church are looked after by the different traditions. So being Catholic, there's, as you might imagine, says me with a little grin, there's candles, there's gilt, there's gold, it's all go. But right in the middle is actually a gilt cross or crucifix where they believe Jesus was crucified, and then to the left and the right. And you can actually look through glass down to the rock where they believe the holes were and so forth. And, you know, for me personally, I'm not too fussed if it is the actual site or not. It's really just that expression. And this is the Holy Sepulchre itself. It's a church within a church. And so what you see under that dome or rotunda is where they believe Jesus was laid out, where he was buried. And of course, 3 days again, 3 days after, rose from the dead. So you can't take photos inside it, but you imagine you go through you have to bow down, which is sort of a forcing you into reverence. And you can, usually about 3 or 4 of you at one time can pray where it was believed he was laid out. So that was the site of the resurrection, according to tradition. And that's the Wailing Wall, or the Western Wall. So you'll all know about the Jewish temple. Jesus visited it, as did many people, of course. But the Romans in around the 60s or 70s AD, so a few years after Jesus' death, there was a rebellion and they destroyed the temple, absolutely razed it to the ground, except this part of the temple wall. And it's for Jews in particular, it's exceptionally sacred because it's the last little bit of the temple. It's the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Islamic mosque is built on top. That's one of the Golden Dome. That's actually managed by Jordan, and non-Muslims basically aren't allowed there. So I wasn't able to go into it. But the mosque sits on top, but this is the wall, the last remaining bit of the temple, which for the Jewish people is exceptionally meaningful. So I wrote a little prayer, had a lovely talk to a rabbi there, and drew. I'm drawing my prayers now, Bob. No, I wrote a little prayer on the paper and stuck it into the wall as is tradition. And if people are interested, every couple of weeks, the rabbis come and clear all those papers out of the wall, and they're buried in the Garden of Olives, which I think is a nice touch.
Wow. Okay. Now, obviously, the country is still focused on hostages that are still held by Hamas. So lots of signage around that?
Yeah, we're going to share a few photos in a moment. I mean, it's a collective trauma, and I'm still trying to get my head around it, but everywhere you go in Israel, there are signs and flags, Israeli flags, as you might expect, you're in Israel, but lots of yellow ribbons, the sign of sort of bring the hostages home, and literally signs just like that one, everywhere. So the word is ubiquity. There is just about every lamppost, signpost, bus shelter, intersection where there are stickers, flags, big banners of the remain. I think there's about 54 hostages left. Half are dead. They only believe about 20 or so are still alive. But one of the things that came through really strongly, certainly within the Israeli mindset or the Jewish tradition, is until each and every one of those people are back, they still feel a terrible wound. And I think perhaps for some other cultures, we would hate what's happened, but go, well, it's... I'm going to struggle to explain this, that we might just say, okay, well, these people are there. We'll do all we can, but we might not be able to bring absolutely everybody home. But for the Jewish people, and actually it's not just the Jewish people, because I met with Jews, Arabs, Druze, and atheists while I was there. It's this collective desire to have everyone home, as if their society is not complete. And it wasn't just the victims of October 7, that soldiers and others who have been kidnapped many years before. It's this deep trauma, but certainly October 7. And so again, and there's lots of photos just everywhere you go, banners, just about every car has a yellow ribbon. People are wearing yellow ribbons on their lapels or around their wrists. This is the door into the old city. Again, this is just everywhere. That's the old city of Jerusalem at the Jaffa Gate. So everywhere you go. So it's a deep, deep, as I say, collective trauma. Part of it, Bob, is the shock and horror of what happened on October 7th. And maybe when we start to show you some of the more affecting images, we can explain that. But it's also a trauma based on knowing that if the likes of Hamas, excuse me, was able to kill more of them, they would. I suppose that was one of the big things that came through to me, was a shock of just what happened, how it happened. Obviously, lots of questions around how that occurred, but understanding that if Hamas got control, there wouldn't be a democratic utopia. Every person in Israel would be slaughtered. And some people might think that sounds dramatic, but, you know, from my impressions, I think they're quite correct. So, yeah, they're everywhere.
It's always been my argument that if Hamas dropped their weapons, there would be peace. If Israel dropped their weapons, there would be no Israel. And, yeah, I think that's a very realistic take on it, isn't it? You actually went to where the massacre occurred, didn't you?
So massacres, yeah, there was a whole lot. As I say, about 1,400 people, mostly civilians, were killed on October 7. So for a New Zealander, that would be like 1,000 Kiwis killed in 6 hours, because that's tragically how long it happened. I think there was about 117 infiltrations. A lot of people who actually, part of the shock for the Israelis, particularly at the kibbutz, and we'll share some photos of that a little later. So kibbutzes are little communities quite close to the border. The one I visited, called Ner Oz, was about 1 kilometre away. But long and short, as we know, and it's a fact, Hamas has squirreled away the money, all the aid that the world gives them into tunnels and weapons. So economically quite deprived. So these kibbutz would often invite and pay Gazans to come across the border to help them work. But long and short, a number of them were basically just collecting intelligence. And so when October 7th happened, and we'd seen the maps, they knew where to go. And so they infiltrated right across the Gaza border, and as I say, killing about 1,400 people and taking 200 or so hostages. As I say, many returned, but about 50 still left, and only half of those alive. But one of the sites, Bob, was called Nova. It was a music festival. So this is where over 400, particularly young people, were slaughtered. And you've just got to imagine, well, it's a music festival. Hamas didn't know they were there. But as the attack started in the morning, they were spotted. And long and short, there were thousands of young people at a music festival. And what you're seeing here is pictures on posts of all of those who died. And I have to say, this was quite affecting to be in this very small area, knowing that 400 plus people died right where you were standing. And I got to meet this young lady. Her name's Mazal. She is a 20-something. One never gives out a lady's age, but Mazal is an Ethiopian Jew who was there and survived. Her two friends there did not. So she talked with me and the others around her experience. And we'll show a video in a second, but some people have already asked me why I haven't recorded more footage with the likes of Mazal and that. And I made a decision early on to actually just be present and to listen. And it's no disrespect to people who do record and so forth. But yeah, because again, some have asked me, why did I not record more? Because she spoke to me for about an hour. But I thought, apart from a few snippets, most of it was for me just to listen and hear. She's a young mum as well. And I've often wondered, what does she tell her kid about what happened? But she's a survivor, and we'll play a short video of that I did reference, and she's describing basically how she was taken and then got away from Hamas.
Feel my head like jump and fall on the floor. A few seconds that I'm not there, like my head on the space, I see black. And when I came back, like to be, I feel someone like that straight my legs, put some ropes on my leg or something. In this moment, I don't know, I feel something heavy put on my legs, someone do something. I know that I need to play dead. That's it. So I play dead and he mess with my legs, and another terrorist come and they start to talk with each other in Arabic. One of them come close to me, and I felt that he come close to me. So I hold my breath, and like I said, my face was on the ground. So he like that, pick up my face, look at me. I guess I was with eye closed, I didn't breathe. And he leave me like that, and they go. They like put the ropes for me like that, and they go.
That must be traumatic every time she retells that story.
Yeah, I asked her about, so yes is the short answer. I asked her quite a bit about that, because sort of the profundity of what she went through, and you know what gives her the strength to tell the story. And for her, she said just people need to understand she doesn't find it easy. She talked a lot actually about praying to God, or Hashem as they would say, and I asked her about that as well. And she still actually has a strong faith, which I find quite remarkable. But what she's describing there is after having been shot at and found, that long and short, they tied her up, but she played dead, and for reasons, well, she doesn't and I don't understand, they did decide to let her go. They obviously believed she was dead. They weren't going to drag her back like others. So she was very lucky. But one moment happened a few seconds after that. Unbeknownst to her or me, there was an artillery battery about 50 meters away, hidden, and it opened fire, which in itself, again, is a profound moment. You've got the death of Nova, and then you know that these artillery shells are falling into Gaza, bringing destruction and likely death too. So it's, again, quite profound. But she almost went as white as a ghost. I mean, I leapt out of my skin. If anyone's been around artillery, it's loud, and it was really close. But in that second, I could see on her face all that horror and terror just flood back. I mean, she regained control. She's a remarkable woman, but again, the horror of it all. And I think the next photo, and some people might find this slightly disturbing, this is her soon after she was rescued. So this is, you know, reality. And, you know, she's going to go through and hold this trauma probably forever. The survivor's guilt, as you have had up before, you know, 2 of her friends didn't make it, along with 400+ others. So pretty affecting. This is a car graveyard, so a lot of it from Nova, but long and short, over the 6 hours that Hamas and the Gazans were raging through the border, obviously shooting people up. I'm not going to include at this time photos of the shot up cars hit by RPGs and so forth. If you've been to war zones, you sort of know what it looks like. Pretty brutal. But why I've included this one, Bob, just of the cars, is they're burnt out not because someone shot them. They're burnt out. And you're going to see it with the kibbutz photos too, because they brought accelerant over It wasn't enough to kill. They wanted to burn and erase the Israelis. And that's why the cars are burnt out. Because, again, if you fire an RPG, if you fire, rifle fire into a car, it by and large doesn't blow up. We're not on the movies. But these were deliberately burned to, destroy the bodies. And not so much destroy the evidence, but that visceral hatred of, in this case, the Israeli people. Again, whether Jewish, atheistic, Arab or not, they wanted to erase them. And you'll see it then with the next photos, because this is the kibbutz called Ner Oz. Again, right on the border. About a quarter of the population was killed. Hamas knew where to go because the Gazan workers who had been there for years had collected intel. And I don't fully understand it. It's people who were often helping, not only economically. One of the older guys used to go and bring Gazan children over the border to the Israeli hospitals. It's all verifiable. This is not made up. He was killed at home. So what you're seeing there is the burnout in the house. I think some of the first photos is like, that's a piano. I think the next one's a TV. And for me, these are just household items, but again, burned. Bullet holes, Kalashnikov rounds into the various doors. I think the next one you just had up, that's, you see a door in the wall a bit broken. That's a grenade that was tossed in to where people were hiding. Again, just the destruction, the burning. Again, it wasn't enough to go in and kill people and take hostages. Things had to be destroyed and burned. So just a door blown off, whether a grenade or an RPG, I don't know. Yeah, again, just the homes. For me, I don't know why, it was just the ordinary household items that stood out. Also, I have to be honest, Bob, it's what's palatable. There was a lot more I saw that I wouldn't want to show.
Well, these aren't military zones. These are homes, just personal homes, aren't they?
They are. Oh yeah, it's just like a little community. Like a little community, as say the burning, everything they could do to erase what had happened. And again, to stress to people, it's not for evidential reasons. This not like, oh, we've committed a crime, let's burn the evidence. This was we want to erase these people. And that's why I came back to that collective trauma comment. They know, talking to the Israeli people. And again, I want to stress they were Arab, they were Druze, they were Jews, they were atheists. They go, if Hamas or Hezbollah in the north had their chance, they would kill every single one of them. Yeah. I think the next photo,
they live with that ever-present threat at all times, don't they? I mean, did you feel that when just being in Israel full stop, that there was that ever-present threat that we just can't understand here in New Zealand?
I don't think we can understand it. I have to say it's a paradox. I felt perfectly safe most of the time. So I was primarily based out of Tel Aviv, and walking around at any time of the day and night, I didn't feel particularly unsafe. I wasn't checking my 6 o'clock. In fact, I'd go as far to say, Bob, I felt safer in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem than I did in Auckland at times. But you're always conscious that the sirens can go off at any point. These are the air raid sirens with the indiscriminate rocket fire. So I wasn't sitting there worried, but you're conscious of it. So I was sitting outside having a coffee with a former Israeli ambassador, and as you're sitting there, and by the way, Israel's a very modern, vibrant society. It looks very similar to New Zealand in many ways, but you're thinking, right, if the sirens go off, where do we seek cover? So you're sort of aware of it, but feeling safe. It's a funny dynamic, but they know they as another guy said to me from the Foreign Affairs Office, they're like a little peanut in size in terms of the whole Middle East. It's so small, and yet surrounded by people who quite explicitly want to wipe them out. This is, again, not as if these Arab nations are going to take over and create a wonderful Western-based democracy. They will wipe these guys out. And Hamas are explicit. They want to kill every Jew, every Israeli. Like, they say it. It's written down.
Yep. Okay, what's this?
So that's just the outside of one of the houses. Again, they often set fire to the houses, not only to erase, but also to get the families out. So in Israel, every house has to have a safe room. So it's more fortified. So this is the outside clearly, but inside it's more fortified for rocket fire, not for actually terrorists coming into the houses. And so they often set the houses on fire because, again, the safe rooms weren't set up for that, to force, as a lot of them did, people out. And as they came out of the houses, they shot them, usually. Some, again, were kidnapped, but mostly families, yeah, they'd set the house like this one on fire. And as the family came out, pop, pop, pop. And in other instances, and this for me is probably, for me personally, is one of the more affecting images. This is the door to one of the safe rooms. You can see the fire, but you can also see the 3 Kalashnikov rounds. It's aimed because the doors don't have locks on them. Again, the door was there for incoming rocket fire, not for terrorists. So long and short, they fired there because of the family that was holding the door on the other side, who are all dead now. You can go in, again, not going to show photos, but you go in, you can see exactly where they died and how. It's pretty graphic. But yeah, just again, for me, I don't know why, it's those simple images that just, I don't know, highlight the barbarity of what happened, and has led to the ongoing violence. I mean, this is the fundamental thing. It didn't conclude on October 7. We still have the war in Gaza. We still have people dying on either side. It's, it continues.
Yeah.
Oh, this you asked about safety earlier. This is just at Tel Aviv airport. It's the first thing I saw when I got off the plane. So there are like bunkers everywhere. When we flew out, there was some indiscriminate rocket fire, but we were already in the air. And only a few days ago, the airport was hit. So these protected areas are there for a reason. And basically, they're just fortified parts of the building where you can go. And again, it's when, I think we've got a video a bit later, there's like when the big air raid sirens go off, you really know it.
Actually, I haven't got that video, but I've got, you were there on Holocaust Day, weren't you?
Yeah, if you play that one, two things you'll notice. One, you'll hear the sirens. Those are the air raid sirens. And secondly, they're being used at that moment, not for an air raid, but it was Holocaust Remembrance Day for the Israeli state. So at 11 a.m. in the morning, all the sirens go off and everyone stops. And so where this very shaky filming is actually on the main highway between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So think of this as the motorways of Auckland, where pretty much 99% of people pull over to the side of the road for a 2-minute silence. So that's profound, but also it gives you a sense of what that alarm siren threat sounds like.
Okay, let me just play a bit and I'll drop the volume. So like you say, most of them had stopped. There's still a few that carry on driving, but that's very sobering just for people to stop and pause and remember, isn't it? So many.
Yeah, the whole country, by and large, does. Not everybody. I suspect some who have a different viewpoint, or a truck driver who says, "Great, I can make up time." But just before 11 o'clock, everyone starts slowly pulling off the motorway. And even as I was filming there, a lot of the cars going past, I could see further up the road pulling over. But literally everyone in the country just stops. But I thought I'd also share it just to give you a bit of a sense of when the alarms go off. Normally that means indiscriminate rocket fire, seek shelter. But the war has been such that the ability of Hamas and Hezbollah, they're being very degraded. So there's still a few rockets, but much fewer than there used to be.
Did you get the chance to go into Gaza?
No, not possible. For two reasons. One, well, actually, the main reason it's a war zone. I get this from a few people at times, and it's a fair question. But it's a war zone. It's not particularly safe to go in. To be fair, the Israelis are not letting many people in at all. There isn't actually, I think, even foreign journalists allowed in. It does raise some questions. But on the other side too, Hamas doesn't take kindly to visitors. So it was an exceptionally unsafe place. As I was at the border, was able to look into Gaza. As I say, watching the artillery, you can hear it. The artillery is just going thump thump around you. That's destruction and death that is raining down, and you can see the buildings shattered. You can see all of that. It's only a hint of what is a horror happening there. But I suppose the question I'd want to leave with people, and I don't have the clear answer to this either, Bob, is what is the response to events that we've just talked about and described? I mean, what is the alternative? And look, for me, I'm not come across great answers. Those who just talk about two-state solutions and so forth, I'll be blunt with you, I don't think I have any idea what they're talking about. But I leave that as a rhetorical question to people. I mean, what is the response to the horrors of October 7? How does one respond? But that leads to questions too, as Israel's got a big modern military. They're putting a lot of firepower into this, small piece of land. Is that appropriate or not? Is it self-defense? Is it reckless? These are the questions people have to ask themselves. But I just come back to what I said at the start. There's this deep collective trauma and a realization for the Israelis as a whole, pretty much. There's always a few exceptions, but for the Israelis as a whole, if they do not get rid of the likes of Hamas and Hezbollah, they will just rebuild and do it again.
Yeah. And I think you're right when I think you said the word pinprick, that Israel literally is a pinprick on the map of the Middle East, and yet every country is hostile towards Israel. UN is hostile towards Israel. The media appears to be hostile towards Israel. And that's why I wondered just whether you had that perception of, even though you're in Israel, it appears safe. I mean, I still think it's probably the safest place to be, just because they are so defense-minded and wary of any extreme attack. But that must get down to the psyche, even when, Israelis travel overseas and they're in American universities, or they're even in New Zealand universities, and there's this anti-Semitism and there's graffiti around Wellington, as we saw recently. That affects the psyche when you think that people are against you like that, doesn't it?
It definitely does. I mean, obviously an Israeli will be able to better describe it, but they do feel quite alone, quite isolated. I mentioned this rabbi that I was talking to at the Western or Wailing Wall, and he picked up my accent, was say, thank you for coming here. And as we talked a bit, they feel very much abandoned. And some people listening might go, well, that's a good reason. I personally don't think so, but they feel abandoned. As you say, they're a little pinprick or a peanut in a sea of people who basically want to wipe them out. So there is a very defensive mindset. They're very proud of their military. It's probably a mindset that New Zealanders don't get. They're because I went and visited technical institutes and a whole lot of other things. It wasn't just, massacre sites day after day. And they proudly talk of their defense work in the same way the Americans do. It's a bit foreign to New Zealanders. But they're very innovative. And just keen to thrive. And that's, again, quite striking. I probably can't do it justice, Bob, but it's a very modern, functioning, liberal democracy there. As you travel around, your different water systems, your irrigation systems, your power lines, the internet, a free press. It's just, again, it's a thriving place. As they'd say, the desert's been made to bloom. A lot of Israel, as we know it today, or Palestine, as the Romans and Ottomans knew it, was malarial swamp. And they've turned it into quite a thriving place. Again, USB sticks, a lot of the medical devices that we use, irrigation systems, all actually have come out of Israel. But also, they're always ready for war. As I said, you see the military, you see the young people, because they all serve, they're all slinging guns over their shoulder. A lot of people carry sidearms. It's a country at war.
Yeah, no, it must affect the psyche. Simon, thank you for that. I mean, that's very sobering. Normally when you share what you did in the holidays, it's usually, fun, but this is a reality check. And look, I guess it's a reminder to our audience just to continue to pray for Israel, pray for the people, but also pray for the Palestinians, that they would be free from the threat and the persecution of Hamas and just the terrorism that Hamas is doing and blocking aid and all those things. So, yeah, it's a reminder for us not to lose our focus of Israel and what they are going through. So, were you were you relieved to get home? Did you, or, I mean, what was the overwhelming emotion that you felt as a result of going there?
I think probably just a deep sadness. I mean, I felt it before in some places. Again, I've traveled to other war zones, and it's just it's the depravity of humanity, regardless of side or sides one's on. There's just death and destruction. So deep sadness. But tempered, I'd say, Bob, is war is ugly, and we don't want it. But I think in the West, we have a very sanitized view of how these things operate. We've watched too many movies. War is a dirty, ugly, miserable business, and you've just seen some of the photos of part of that. So yeah, it was a deep sadness. I think I was relieved to get home, as much because my family and friends were very stressed that I was away. They were very, very worried. And that's actually, if I might, just one last quick impression. Where we were flying out to get to Israel, and I can't prove this, but everything, we were sort of put to the far reaches of the airport. The plane taking us to Tel Aviv couldn't have been further away on the airport complex if they tried. And I suppose, to be fair, when you fly into the likes of Dubai or wherever else in the Middle East, they're not terribly thrilled with what's happening, but that exclusionary, that separation dynamic of Israelis is very clear. And I want to stress, I wasn't worried, didn't feel threatened, but I was just really conscious, particularly as I was flying back. You are easily and very quickly identified as being Israeli or coming from Israel.
Yeah.
And it was only once I'd cleared security and was able to, I was at Dubai in this case, as I was just able to blend back into the general grouping, I just sort of noticed a slight change in my awareness from being very aware or very conscious of being separated, segregated, whatever the right term is, to then just being back in the grouping. So there is that ever-present threat's probably not quite the right word, but it was just, I just found it
Awareness.
interesting. Maybe that's probably not the best language for it. But no, I'll just say it's nice to be home. I prefer the greenness of New Zealand to the deserts that we saw like at Qumran, and that. It's like, yeah, quite something.
Well, like I said at the start, I mean, I was jealous of your opportunity, but at the same time, I think I'd have a huge amount of trepidation going there. But I've always wanted to visit Israel, and of course, just with the connection to Scripture and us understanding why what's happening in Israel is happening, it gives you a bit of a deeper understanding of all of this. Now, just before we wrap it up, you are substacking on some of your journeys as well. So if people want a bit more of your trip, they can go to your Substack, can't they?
Yeah, over the coming weeks, I'll both on my social media, so likes of Facebook and Instagram, I'll be sharing photos and impressions, but I'll be trying to write more into my Substack. I've got too many ideas and thoughts in my head at the moment, so I'm just slowly working through them. Probably will do a whole series of articles over the coming weeks, and yeah, people are welcome to check that out and share their thoughts with me.
All good. Okay. Thank you, Simon. Really appreciate your time.